Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion on the top 5 technologies for getting people back to work. I don't think you can go to a real estate conference nowadays and not talk about back to work, but I think we're going to take it outside the box a little bit and really focus on the technology that's required to get people back to work. So let me first introduce the panelists for our conversation. We have Sagar Moravia, who's the Director of Global Solutions for Yardi. We've got Maria Aiello, who's a Senior IT Executive at Manulife, and Tommy Russo, who's the CTO of Ackridge. So all very long-term friends and colleagues, and thank you so much for joining me this afternoon for this timely conversation. So the first thing I want to talk about, and obviously, getting people back to work from a technology standpoint, I think there's kind of 2 factors going on, right? There's kind of the psychological factor of back to work, and then there's the kind of the physical factor of, am I going to get sick? So Maria, I'm going to start with you. First of all, what are you seeing in terms of people coming back to work? And what do you think the primary thing real estate has to do in order to make people feel safe coming back to the workplace?
Great. Yes. So I think we're seeing a lot of different things in terms of our thinking on return to work. I mean, being a global organization, there's certainly different geographies that are responding differently depending on the cases that they see. And return to work then means, how do we prepare for whatever geographies and whenever they actually can and will go back to the office, given the conditions, the well-being, the health of their employees in those respective geographies. So I think that it becomes a discussion of wellness and maintaining the cleanliness of the space that they're going to return to, and making it inviting enough for them to want to return, given where they've been at home for the last 14 months or 15 months. So I think it really becomes when we do finally get the go to return to work, is it an environment that they will feel comfortable in returning to, that they feel safe in returning to, and that they feel that it's going to not, I guess, also take away the life balance that they've achieved during this time. So I think we have to kind of check all those boxes when it comes to the technologies that we require around that return to work strategy or return to office strategy.
Mm-hmm. So Tommy, as CTO of Akron, so first of all, what are you seeing in terms of people coming back to the workplace, and what is Ackridge doing from a technology standpoint to support that?
So we went from an occupancy in our downtown, we are regional, so we're only in Washington, D.C., we're expanding out to North Carolina, but in the D.C. metropolitan area, in our suburban properties, we never really saw a huge decline. We saw probably a 25% decline. In the urban area, we saw a significant decline down to about 10% of occupancy. In the last month or 2, we've probably scaled back up into the 30 percentile. Last week, I think we maybe even hit higher than that. In our corporate offices, it was interesting to see last week in our senior staff meeting, of the 11 participants that have been in the senior staff meeting, 8 of them were in the office, which that was the first time in 14 months we had a majority of the staff in the office. But it goes back to the point where we weren't in a conference room together. We were on a Zoom call just like this, even though we were only an office apart. So we're seeing a very big uptick in people coming back to work. I think it's going to be ramped, but back to the life balance, I don't think it'll ever, or not for a very long time, go back to 100% in the office 100% of the time. But I think we humans have a short memory. And if production can continue at pre-COVID, post-COVID in a hybrid model, I don't think it will go back. But if production of the firms can't sustain where we were pre-COVID, I think you'll see everyone back in the office at a necessity for success of the company.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, I agree. I think what COVID actually demonstrated was not to the employees, but demonstrated to the employers that people can actually be productive working from home. And so it becomes a fact of work is something you do, not somewhere you go. And that certain elements of the workforce can be very productive if they're not actually in the workplace. So Sagar, let's go to you I'm sorry, Tommy, go ahead.
Can I give you one more piece of it? So the other piece of it from an urban perspective, and what is worrisome to me is, if you don't have a full occupancy downtown, can the restaurants and small businesses sustain viability? You don't want to end up with a workplace in an urban environment with nowhere to eat, or on an island, or nowhere to shop when you want to shop. So if we don't get back to some sort of majority of people being in the offices, I think the places that have closed temporarily due to COVID may not ever reopen. So I think there's a balance, and that's a lot of jobs.
Sure. So yeah, there's certainly a large factor of restaurants and retail that depend on the workers to come into the office. But I think COVID also impacted restaurants and retail in the in the suburban areas, just by the mere fact that they can't get people together in a closed environment. But anyway, so let's go to Sagar. Let's talk a little bit about, obviously Yardi is a company that provides solutions to the real estate industry. How have you seen a change in terms of the products that you're developing and the tools that you're providing for real estate to respond to back to work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Darlene, and it goes back to your question about the psychological needs and then the physical needs, right? So, a lot of the landscape is changing, that's for sure. And, whether there'll be physical restaurants next to the office space, or people are going to rely more on the delivery services as they are, and then getting used to in the COVID era, who knows, right? But from a technology perspective, I think when we break it down into these two buckets, psychological and physical, psychological is mainly, making sure that the employees feel safe and the management feels safe to bring employees back in, because in a way it's management's responsibility, for whatever happens within the premises. So from a tools and technology perspective, we've seen, at Yardi, we have developed, a lot of solutions to address this space. And we've seen our clients, whether they are owners or corporate occupiers, adopting these solutions in different ways to either facilitate safe re-entry for their employees, whether it's just more communication, whether it's doing simple health surveys, whether it's giving them ways to reserve a workspace, and letting them know that, hey, if you are going to sit on desk 2 in row 1 on floor 2, there's not going to be anyone next to you, and we have reserved that space, we have blocked that space, so there's going to be social distancing, right? So being able to do all of that technologically and making it transparent to the employees, I think that is helping with the psychological mindset. And people do want to go back because they've been at home for 14 months. So there's going to be this urge to get out and go back into offices. But then, again, because of these second waves, third waves that's happening globally, everyone is scared and they want this, right balance of, are we safe if we go in? And if we do, what does it look like?
So Maria, let's talk a little bit about what are tenants asking for? What are your clients asking for in order for their workforce to feel safe coming back into buildings?
Yeah, so we talk about the technology. So I think it's what we're seeing is, touchless, contactless. Like, what are the things we want to open a door and not feel like we've just gotten COVID as a result of touching a door that wasn't cleaned. So I think we want more focus on those technologies, and that's what we're seeing from both an employee, so the occupier side and the tenant side. And that relationship with the tenant as a landlord has certainly changed, because we play a bigger role in securing the safety of that environment for our tenants, to help the tenants bring their respective employees back to work. So I think that it's certainly changed the landscape of how we interact with our tenants as a landlord, and certainly amplified the need for us to manage our employee experience in an entirely different way, with a focus on the well-being and the safety of the environment for our employees. Not that that wasn't focused before, but I think we have to target our technologies now to include them, to highlight the importance of that in our ecosystems. And I don't think that's going to go away, quite honestly, on either side.
So are you looking at retrofitting within the buildings where you've got automated doors and buttonless elevators? And give me an idea of specifics.
Certainly, yes, certainly those opportunities. Absolutely. Those discussions have taken place with vendors. Vendors are jumping all over this. Obviously, and I think PropTech has done a great job of trying to respond to it more quickly. And, vendors like Yardi, obviously, too, are responding to it. So I think we have to take advantage of those discussions now, even though many of us are not back in the office. I know, Tommy, maybe, some of, it depends on where you are. Again, I think that's the issue is where are you?
Yeah.
But wherever you are, I think we have to basically start leveraging those technologies, looking at what we can do with an elevator. Our vendors should really look at this as an opportunity to offer those solutions and come up with something that we can deploy.
So Tommy, what about with Eckridge? What are your tenants asking for? Are you doing a lot with touchless technologies, or what are some of the other things that they're asking for to feel safe coming back to work?
So we don't have any tenants in our buildings. We only have
Your
clients.
Great.
Our clients are asking, our biggest ask has probably been MERV 13 filters or above, which is easy to just snap your fingers and say you're going to do it. But in reality, when you're protecting a multi-million-dollar asset, you can't just pull a filter out and put a filter in. I could pull a MERV 8 filter out and put a MERV 13 filter in, and then create so much stress on the piece of equipment behind it, you burn it up. So taking the right steps and making sure that your air is balanced, because obviously a MERV 8 filter is thin. A MERV 13 filter is much thicker. So the air that flows through the MERV 13 filter, yes, the filter will pick more particulate up, but at the same time, it creates a lot more back pressure so that the equipment has to work harder. Secondly, the clients are asking for policies. So building policies and making sure that they know what to expect. Are we expecting that everyone wear masks in private spaces? Some jurisdictions, luckily in DC, it's mandated. In Maryland, we have some buildings in Maryland and we have some buildings in Virginia. It's not mandated, but we put policies in place and publicize them. You walk into a building, there's a big board that shows you what our policies are. There's a QR code that you can scan that'll pick it up on your phone, and so you can read it on your phone and understand what we as the building manager are expecting for the building. Secondly, we're cleaning high touch areas all the time. We're covering like elevator buttons. You can cover them with antimicrobial surfaces that supposedly kill 100% of the bacteria for a 24-hour period. So you cover it once a day. Your elevator buttons are protected. I mean, it's interesting to see that when the pandemic first started, the people that were coming into the office, you end up seeing little white spots on all your elevator buttons. And that was from people using keys or metal little things, and ruined your elevator buttons. Well, let's educate them and tell them what we're doing to make sure that doesn't happen. And then we put hand dispensers with sanitizer on every floor and towels in every elevator lobby and every bathroom, and trash cans outside the doors. So it's going to be tough to retrofit a bathroom with an automated door, but to put a paper towel dispenser on the inside and a trash waste basket on the outside. So when you exit the door, there's a waste basket there to throw your paper towel in. It makes you feel better.
Right. So from a technology standpoint, Tommy, what tools are you using to communicate these changes, these policy changes to the tenants?
So that's been a huge change.
Clients.
That's been a huge change. So we have had more Zoom or WebEx. We use WebEx. We've had more WebEx town hall meetings with our clients than we've ever had meetings face-to-face in the history of the organization. So we have as many meetings as we can have, stating policies, listening to people, understanding what they want, helping them. We've looked at the wireless technology for paper towel refills and things like that, which doesn't really get there, but it could be. And then again, it's really making sure that they understand the ventilation systems in the building and helping them understand it. We also installed IAQ. So we have indoor air quality sensors that measure 10 things that if a client wants the access to see it, we'll give it to them. We're happy to show them that.
Let's come back to IAQ. Let's stick a little bit with, because I do want to talk about that in a minute. So Sagar, in terms of, again, tools and solutions and specifically software, what are you seeing in terms of the data and the kind of the measuring of certain data sets that will help people get back to work. And I'm specifically talking about occupancy, utilization, de-densification, yada, yada, yada. So talk to us a little bit about what tools you're providing to help manage occupancy and traffic flow and utilization coming back to work.
That's right. Yeah. And, you know, two different perspectives, right? What Maria gave and Tommy gave. And Maria is like, you know, from a landlord perspective, they're interested in making sure that tenants are, you know, coming in and they have the right tool set. On the other hand, we have, you know, had a lot of conversations with some of our other clients who said, you know, they are, you know, responsible for, and they want to be responsible for the building and the common areas. But what tenants do in their space is, you know, their lookout, and you know, it's like a liability thing and they don't know like where to draw the line. And so it's like, you know, we want to stay away. So from a technology perspective, I would say for the landlords and Tommy, you know, I think WebEx and Zoom is one way of doing it, but Yardi has this commercial cafe tenant portal, you know, solution where the landlords provide this solution as a communication tool to all the tenants. It could be your clients, customers, and that's a way to, like, you know, send out your announcements, you know, get you know, feedback from your clients or customers, and use it for various other things, right? Whether it's a work order request coming in from those tenants or clients, or, you know, they just want to look up their documents, or you publish a document about the building policies. So that's one side of, you know, from a landlord, what they can do for the tenants. And for the tenants themselves, I think it's, you know, occupancy management is going to be the focus for the next, you know, few months, years. But you cannot look at it as, you know, in a silo. It's the entire thing, which, you know, the end-to-end solution for managing their real estate, corporate real estate, which will help them come up with the right strategies. So in occupancy management, you're tracking like what your utilization is, you know. You can, you know, Yardi has Yardi Quorum, which, you know, gives you various ways of slicing and dicing the view and say, which business unit in Southern California is, you know, occupying the most space, right? Or what's my cost per head for the sales and, you know, admin department, things like that, right? So to be able to get to that granular level of data from an occupancy standpoint, but then you need to also understand from a leasing team perspective, what are the spaces that we currently have, what is coming up for renewal, what's you know, what are our options, right, when it comes to either letting go of these spaces or optimizing in general, right? And how do you connect this occupancy data and the leasing data and work with the transaction team who is responsible for just carrying out all these transactions, and give them like a single platform where they can see this data and make informed decisions, right? And so that's what our focus with Yardi Quorum is, which is, you know, occupancy management is going to, you know, provide that space management, that immediate needs, but then for all the real estate teams to be able to collaborate and work in a synergy, like that entire stack needs to work for them.
Well, I think one thing that COVID has also taught us is that there's a wide range of definitions around occupancy, right? So there's utilization, which is kind of an average of your utilization rate is 67%. Then there's occupancy, which a lot of people track based on assigned seating. And then there's actually presence, which I consider occupancy presence, which is real-time, location-based, where are my people,
exactly.
You know, blah, blah. So Maria, let's talk a little bit about what is the building owners or managers' responsibility around understanding real-time occupancy in the buildings, you know, really more from a COVID compliance standpoint. So you got to be concerned about managing traffic flow through the lobbies and not having too many people in the building at any given time. So are you seeing that there's a burden on the building owner to be able to collect that data? And if so, what are you using that data for?
Yeah, so great question. I think that we look at it from the two perspectives. One is, you know, the wellness of our employees, and knowing that there's an attestation that happens when someone enters a building, and keeping everybody, you know, current with that attestation and aligning that with who's in the building. Are they healthy? Are they not healthy? Should they be there? Should they not be there? I think then that has basically crossed the line or the boundaries that were traditionally there with the landlord side of the business, where now we manage that lobby, people coming in. So what role do we play, or should we play as managers, owners, landlords of the building, in managing that traffic that kind of goes up the stairs or goes through the elevators, and how do we measure who's there? And we never used to have to do that in terms of, even communicating that as well. Like back to your point about communicating at the building level, I think a lot of that has to come together as well, right? Like, so I think we have I guess a responsibility to communicate what's going on daily with regards to a particular geography, and how do we do that? What technologies do we use to make that clear, both as a landlord and as a occupier piece, right? So I think that, yes, we are seeing a change in what we have to do, and when that responsibility starts on both sides. And
So
in
you
terms of
mentioned-
collaboration, I think, community, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but, I think that can I share my screen? I've never said that more often than this year, because every time you want to explain something to someone, you're sharing your screen, or please unmute, you're on mute, that kind of thing. But I think that we've started to share ourselves more with our tenants. And I think that's important. And I think that's where collaboration continues to be important, and the communication tools that we use to engage and endear to whoever our clients might be, whether it's the tenants or the employees.
So Tommy, Maria mentioned this attestation where you go in and, have you been exposed? Have you traveled? Do you have a fever? Yada, yada. So what have you done at Ackridge to provide kind of that ability for tenants to check the box that I'm not sick before you come into work? So that's kind of the first part of the question. And is it the landlord's responsibility to do that? And if so, what is the risk and liability to the landlord for having to screen people before they come into work? So can you kind of take that whole 3-part question and run with it?
So first of all, yes, we live that, because I have multi-client buildings, and then I also have owner-occupied buildings. So in a multi-client building, that first question is really, really, really tough, because I live in DC. I mean, that's where our business is. Well, it's as political as it can come. You have both ends of the facet. So you have a building that has half to the right and half to the left. The left says you have to be screened. The right says no way. So where do you reside in the middle? And we, as in a multi-client building, has pushed that back to the client. We have concierge and guards, or attendants in every one of our lobbies. And yes, we've protected them with screens. But at the end of the day, we are not screening as we come into the building in a multi-client building. We are recommending, here's what we're doing. The big sign says, if you have been sick, if you have been in contact with someone in 14 days or 10 days with COVID, don't enter the building. But at the end of the day, for enforcement, who do you have that's really going to do it? You're not going to have a security guard stand there and be like, you can't come in, or it is what it is. In a owner occupied building, it's a very different equation. The owner occupier can say, we do 7 very big associations they own and occupy their entire building. Their philosophy has been totally different. Whereas before you can come into my building, I got a infrared sensor touching your forehead. Can you come in? If you have a fever, you're not coming in, is what it is. And that's their right. But in a multi-client building, absolutely not. To tie back one thing, Darlene, for technology, all technology isn't new. So the easiest way to track occupancy is through access control. So the numbers I gave you are based on facts on access control. So the first thing we did, if the building wasn't already fully secured before COVID, all of our buildings are now fully secured. So you have to scan in. And we're looking at occupancy on a real-time basis from our access control providers via real-time scans. So every day, every hour, we can tell you how many people were in the building. At the end of the day, I can give you the occupancy of how many people were in the building, what floors they were on, based on the scans, because indeed, all of our stairwells are locked. It's all access controlled, and it gives us full occupancy into who's in the
So
building.
how granular is that data in terms of, is it floor by floor, suite by suite? And then
Yes.
Are you requiring people to badge out? So how do you know when they leave?
They do not badge out. But at the end of the day, I'm not really worried about badging out. I'm worried about how many people were in the building during the day. So that's where we're getting our numbers from. And in our jurisdiction, and this is our company's take on this actually, if I lease space to Darlene Pope and Darlene Pope decides she wants to have 100% occupancy all through COVID, even though the District of Columbia said 25% inside, it's not for me to tell you you can't. As soon as I tell you I can't, then you say, well, I'm only going to pay 25% of my rent. So you as the client got to determine what your occupancy level was.
So is the jurisdiction putting the restrictions on the building owner or on the occupant?
Our jurisdictions put the policies out there and said, here's the policy. The problem with the whole thing is, where's the enforcement? I know a very big prominent real estate company in New York City. New York City was shut down. Every one of their 360 employees reported to work every single solitary day all through COVID. The building that they were in had 2,000 people in it. There was 380 people in it through COVID. 360 of them were their employees every day. Where's the enforcement?
Right. Well, and I think enforcement is obviously a big piece of policy, but let's go back to how can we use technology to kind of mitigate the risk, and whether that risk is to the building owner or to the occupant, there is inherent risk in having people come back to work. So Sagar, let's talk a little bit more again about technologies and what else haven't we covered? What other technologies do you see clients asking for that will help support this journey of getting people back to work?
That's right. I think it's across the spectrum. The simplest requirement is, we are opening up offices in 2-3 months, and all we need is a way for our employees to reserve workspaces. Tell me I'm going to come in Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the next 7 weeks, and that's about it. And from an admin perspective, I want to be able to approve, and I want to know like when they come in. So which is they can publish a survey, right? So that's a simplistic scenario for an organization that wants to continue, providing flexible, workplace for their employees. On the other side, there are enterprises who are not thinking just short term, but also longer term, because COVID has changed this landscape, and they want to make sure, like, once COVID is behind us, hopefully, at some point it will be, and this flexible hybrid workplace is here to stay. So what are the technologies, and what is the technology investment that they're willing to make now that will help them, 5 years, 10 years down the line as well? And so to get to the most granular level and use like IoT devices and beacons to not only track who is entering the building, and it's not who, right? So the technology needs to be anonymous by nature. So there are a couple of ways this can be done, right? You can just have a heat signature of human bodies entering the building, exiting the building, and it can track who's in the building. You can have the same thing applied at the suite level, and you're coming in, you're going out, and you have that. And then there can be beacons at the desk as well. So if you are trying to understand what your occupancy metrics look like for a 250-seater office space, and that a certain desk or certain area within that unit is not that occupied throughout the day, you can reconfigure, make it more communal, make it more inviting, and still accommodate the same number of individuals who have a need to come into that space, right? So to be able to capture that trend. So there is like two ends of the spectrum, and somewhere in the middle, like there's like every organization. So that landscape is evolving too, and we are hearing like feedback from everyone with different needs, and I believe we have solutions that can address all those needs.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good point. I think a lot of companies spent more money putting vinyl stickers on the floor to show people where to stand than they did on looking at longer term solutions around occupancy detection, IoT, mobile apps, and things like that. And Tommy, I saw you holding your phone up. I know you have something to contribute there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, what do you see, not just in a COVID environment, but what are some of the tools and technologies people should be investing in today to meet their immediate needs, but also looking at their long-term strategy?
So one of the pieces of technology for tracking the beacon, and that everyone has one of these. So you can set long-range beacons at the entryways, and you can manage people coming in and out via the signature on their cell phone. I don't know of a single solitary person, carte blanche, that doesn't carry one. Some people may forget them, But again, it's just another piece of technology to do that. So, the big thing everyone's talking about is passports and things like that. We at Ackridge, as soon as COVID struck, I know I had to be in the office due to my job. We invented an app that allowed all of our employees to fill out the COVID screening. And before they can enter our space, they have to scan their QR code, which then allows them into the space. So if they haven't filled out the 15 questionnaire that the CDC put out, stating that they haven't been in contact, yada, 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 they couldn't get into our space. We shared that with our clients. If our clients wanted to use it, we gave it to them. It wasn't, we did it because I wasn't going into the office unless I could feel secure. I was vulnerable and it was what it was. Secondly, from a technology perspective, again, air quality control, IAQ, and the ability to walk in your space. And I think shared offices are a thing that may wean back, because quite truthfully, I don't want to be in a space somebody else was in. Unless you're bringing UV light in at a hospital grade and going to flash it in my space for 15 minutes, I'm not sitting at that desk. When I leave my door, I shut my office door and people go in. I think adversely, long-term effect, more space is going to be rented because people want their own space.
That's a great point. And Maria, I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, but even with a prior employer, we were seeing that there may be less people. So say 70% of the workforce is coming back, but the 70% that are coming back want bigger space between them. And so maybe it's less people, more space. So Maria, what are you seeing in terms of current trends, and what do you think future trends are around how much space we're going to be designing for?
Yes, well, you asked about the retrofitting or whether people are rethinking. I think there's a rethinking, to your point, Tommy, about how much space each person should occupy, going back to maybe more historic analytics.
2000 levels.
Closed door offices are coming back. I think those trends are real. I honestly do. I think that's what we're talking about. And like I said, it differs by geography, but the overall consistent sentiment is I don't feel comfortable with someone else being in my space that, I need to own this space. That's it. No one else touches it. And it's cleaned every night like it normally is, but I'm the only one that occupies it. I think that there is definitely that discussion going on across all, the thing is though, that's a very expensive decision to make. But one, I think that has to be made in terms of helping people to come back. And I do think, though, kind of aligning that with the technology discussion, is that there's a huge opportunity for IWMS solutions to help with this, right? Because we talk about, reservations and occupancy, but it's really, I think, what they're not today is what they should be. They should be thinking about what they need to be post-COVID. And that's really kind of a huge partnership opportunity to help with what we have to do to rethink the space, make it larger, but what do we do with it? How do we help with that as an IWMS solutions provider? How do we help with that with collaboration, right? We talked about collaboration where I'm in the office, but I'm having a Zoom call with the person next door. That might be the behavior, right? That we have to align with. But I think that there's an opportunity for a lot of these technologies to think about post-COVID, to help us think about post-COVID.
So Maria, I couldn't agree with you more on that point. I'm just saying. But I think, again, we just had a panel discussion earlier where we were talking about digital workplace and the need to have a single source of truth. So you don't have all your data in different platforms, and you got some on the cloud and some on-prem and some with this vendor and some with that. And you don't have the ability to run correlations among the different data sets to really understand what's happening and what's impacting employee experience, or how one factor is impacting another factor. And you can't run scenarios, and you can't, if your data is all over the place. So I agree with you 100%. So Tommy, what are your thoughts again on, tools and technologies and data sets, and what do we need today to meet immediate requirements, but also what should we be investing in to meet long-term roadmap?
So first, I'd like to say it doesn't matter where your data is, whether it's on the cloud or in the office, as long as you can access it and it's easy to access, that's what's important. So making sure that that's easier. And just to tie back on the one thing, one more second on this workspace. There's four of us on this call. If we were in cubes side by side, you'd have to be wearing a mask all day long. You're not going to want to do that. You're going to want to stay at home. So that goes back to the point of individual spaces become more relevant. As it pertains to technology, I think pre-COVID, WebEx, Zoom, Teams was a thing that you've probably frowned upon, used when you had to. It has become a staple of the workplace. Everybody and their brother now has a platform that you can use that is the easiest pie to use. As it becomes more interactive, and let's think about 14 months ago when we started, there were no breakout rooms. The video quality wasn't what it was. The audio was absolutely horrid. Over COVID, all those things were invented, improved, and got better for everybody to use. So imagine where we would be if we didn't have this. This would be a phone call people would be listening to. The fact that we can even have this is huge. And as it pertains to other technologies, I think this is going to become a bigger driver than, say, a laptop. So the ability to have your office phone, the ability to open documents and things like that is huge, because people have gotten accustomed to being able to work a flexible schedule and you have to be able to accommodate that when you go back into the workplace.
So Maria, let's talk a little. So let's go to the mobile app, because I agree with you, Tommy. I think that we need to use the technology we're used to outside the building. We need to make sure that we're using inside the building. So Maria, what are you guys doing, or what are you seeing in terms of demand for a lot of these solutions to be available, at the on a mobile device, and to have an integrated opportunity to have all that feature and functionality in an app?
I think, we actually had this discussion where I'm still surprised that a lot of vendors out there, especially in the real estate industry, don't have a mobile app available. But I think mobile is the rage. It has everything to do with the employee experience. It makes everything accessible. I think communication has to extend to the mobile app as well. I do think we have to up that metric or that quotient in terms of what's available in the mobile app. And actually the whole strategy, a digital strategy, needs to incorporate that as an imperative. I would say I call that an imperative. But I really, what the silver lining of COVID, and I think we've talked about this as peers, is that in an industry that was often a laggard in digital transformation, I think it's really helped us to amplify the need for digital, what even it means, right? We're living it. We're living DR right now. All those DR tests we're living the reality of what DR looks like. And I think that we should leverage this, get our vendors to become mobile, to focus on everything that we can to digitize our industry. I really think that we can't lose sight of the opportunity that we have. Because with the other thing, and I don't know if Tommy or Sagard, you found this or you've talked about this too, Darlene, is that everyone's present. And so this is a great opportunity to get them to talk about the technology that'll bring everybody back to the office as a team. I really do.
So Sagar, let's go back to mobile app conversation. What are some of the tools that you're seeing a high demand for from the marketplace in terms of those app functions?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Maria mentioned about the lack of mobile apps, and I'm frankly, surprised, because I believe like in the last 5 to 7 years, a lot of vendors, even in the prop tech space, have adopted mobile technology. So Yardi, we have 22 plus mobile apps if you go to the App Store and search for it. And these are all the role-based apps, right? And depends on what role, a team or an individual is performing. So if you are an accountant, like mobile app is of no use to you because you cannot do accounting on mobile app, right? But if you are a facilities, person, right? A manager or a technician, or if you are an employee, right? So we have built this mobile apps, which talks to the backend system, which talks to the front office admin system, and then it has an end user usage as well. So for our facilities manager product, we have a mobile app for the technician, which can be offline. They can go to the location, they can take pictures about what the issue is there. Once they've fixed something, they can update the status, and all of that real-time updates the database so that the management team knows, and they can let the tenant know that, hey, things have been fixed. I think the same technology, like when you combine it with the occupancy management. And so we talked about, you go, you occupy a desk, you leave for the day. You want to make sure when you come in tomorrow, first, thing is no one else sat there. And if they did, the desk has been cleaned before you came in and took that seat. So being able to streamline that process and make it automated where, someone leaves the office premises, a notification goes out to the cleaning crew, they come in, they clean it, they've notified that the desk is clean. And when I come in tomorrow, I have that flag, digital flag on my space saying, your desk is cleaned and it's good to occupy, right? So, but then the flip side of that, and just one more point here, is that there's flurry of mobile apps. And so from an occupier employee standpoint, like Yardi is a large occupier. And let's say if I have to have an app that Yardi's management tells me to use for certain functions, but then I'm going into a building that's managed by, some other corporation, and they say for you to enter this building, you have to enter, use this app. And then, there is a third party who's managing the concierge over there, and they may say, for you to use this concierge functionality, you have to use our app. So as a user, now just for my one space that I go to work in, I have like 3 different apps, and it could be more than that. So at Yardi, what we are also focused on is bringing this entire experience in like one app. And we can do that because we represent the technology landscape on the landlord side and also the tenant side. So it's easier for us to connect those dots.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think having APIs and the ability to integrate different platforms allows and supports the ability to have a single user interface to get to that data and to get to those functions. Yeah. So tell me, let's go back. I know you mentioned indoor air quality. I think that's probably one of the number one things that people are talking about, asking about, whether it's getting back to school, getting back in buildings, getting back into restaurants. Outdoor dining is safer than indoor dining, and it's all because of indoor air quality. So what are you doing as a real estate owner and manager and I know you talked about the filters, but to balance the need for more outside air with the need to make sure your building is energy efficient? Because the more outside air you bring in, the more energy you're going to spend. I know you're smiling. So especially, it's got to be a really important issue for real estate owners. So how are you managing that?
First of all, managing the expectations and realizations. So recommendations are just that, recommendations. Standards are standards. And there's a difference between the two. If you listen to every recommendation out there, you get yourself into trouble because your energy meter goes like this and stays like this all day long. You have to really balance and understand what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do. So running outside air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year accomplishes only one thing. That's to increase your energy usage. When the building isn't occupied from midnight to 6 a.m. or from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., I can turn the air every 7 times in an hour. Why would I want to run it more than 7 times? So understanding how much it takes to run that, to turn the air, is what you have to understand. That's the first part of it. The second part of it is IAQ and the ability for a sensor the size of this, nothing more, that looks at VOCs, off-gassing, CO2, ozone, temperature, humidity, formaldehyde, 10 sensors in that one sensor that are cheap, that you can put up and look at, and as a building, I can run my building by it. I connect that via IP back to my BAS, bring my outside air on when CO2 goes up or down. That I may have already had my BAS to begin with, but it's a secondary point that I can put this anywhere I want because it's a wireless sensor. So giving and then extending that to the client. So if my client on the 5th floor decides, you have a sensor in the air handler room, that's great. I want one in my space. Fine, here you go, put it in. They can then monitor that with the same 10, 12, 13 sensors. And then lastly, we used Underwriters Laboratory, UL. UL has come in and certified all of our buildings for healthy buildings. And using these sensors, we're working with them to do a real-time continuing. So they did it at one point in time in November, they certified all of our buildings. Now with their active sensors, they're working on real-time active certifying on a real-time basis.
Mhm.
If you feel good about it and understand what's going into the space, I think you feel a little bit better. I mean, it's crazy that most of our buildings have cleaner air than our homes, but yet we sat in our homes.
So
Right,
Tommy, can I
right.
ask a quick question about the analytics though, right? Because I do think there's an analytics component to all of this.
Huge.
Sorry, we didn't talk about analytics as being a technology, but I think analytics drives everything that we do. It's top of mind, everybody. So now suddenly I think people want to know things that they didn't want to know before.
Yep.
Pre-COVID, right? They want to know how clean the air is. So is there a metric we're going to have to socialize or communicate? Similarly to cleaning, when I walk into a bathroom, besides the fact that I don't want to have to touch the knob or the door handle, I want to know the last time it was cleaned. Maybe I didn't know that before. So how do I make that analytic
Visible.
available and visible to anyone that's entering that space, right? Because I think it's going to be important and an engaging approach to bring in our tenants back and our employees back, right? To know that they can see, okay, I'm walking into this bathroom and it's clean. And the last time it was clean was, and that kind of thing. And maybe they want to know how many people were in there. Like there's going to be metrics, I think, that they need to see and understand that we have never really thought of being important anymore. So I think it's how do the technologies help us to do that? Do we use emerging technologies? How do we use AI to help us draw this out and make it available? So I think that there's more that we want to know as occupiers of the building, as tenants of the building, so that we can in turn feel comfortable with either our tenants or our employees or ourselves, I think, right? So,
Well, I think that's
I didn't want to interrupt you, but I thought that would be.
No, I think that's a great
Spot
point.
on.
Absolutely a great point. And I think that what I love about that statement is that it's not only data that we've been collecting, but now there's different people that are asking for that data. And so whether it's occupancy, indoor air quality, energy, I think we've seen tenants asking for energy data, but now they're asking for completely different data. And so Tommy, what are you doing to respond to that? Like, are you giving your tenants data? Are they asking for different data sets than they had been asking for before COVID?
So the answer is yes. And the answer is we have to be very careful because I have this sensor, right? I look up to it and I go, and the CO2 goes up, boop, off the chart. So if you analytically show that it went up for 40 seconds, they're gonna say, oh, there's a problem. So it's not just the analytics behind the data, it's creating the data in a presentable format that doesn't show 15 people walking up going, breathing all over the sensor. 5 years ago, we did a building, put well building in before, Robert De Niro and Lady Gaga displaying it. And no one did it because in any room with more than 4 people, you had to have a light on the wall that showed your CO2 level. Well, people would walk up to the light and go, and the light would come on. We have to leave, which goes back to the analytics of you don't want that. So we realized that most of the data is 15-minute increments. Yes, I'm collecting it on a second-by-second basis, but I can't give it to someone on a second-by-second basis because, then you're getting a call. Oh my God, there's 500 parts per million over where it should be. It's impossible. Or, someone sprayed perfume in a bathroom and the VOCs went off the chart, and now everyone says, "Oh my God, we're dying from being poisoned." I mean, we've seen it happen. Someone sprays perfume in a bathroom with the sensor that goes into the return air. Your VOCs go up instantaneously. You think the perfume goes on you, but it doesn't. But the ask is, people are asking for it, and understanding how to give it to them has been tough for us because at first. Here's real time data.
It's going to be tougher for everyone, Tommy, coming out of this, because there's going to be things that we can't readily provide unless we're really using this opportunity to prepare for what that needs to look like to be able to respond quickly. Because someone off the street is going to say, "I walked into a bathroom. You let somebody in the building that had COVID, and oh no, they went into the same bathroom." But how do we know that they went into the same bathroom? Oh no, right? So we have to kind of be able to distill all those scenarios. I think, that's a huge, like I said, it's a huge opportunity for vendors, I have to say. I really think so.
So Sagar, that's a good segue into, how do you do data validation Because garbage in, garbage out, as they say. So when you're collecting all this data and you've got various dashboards that are reporting the data, how are you ensuring kind of quality of data, data validation, and really reporting meaningful data as opposed to, as Tommy said, spikes here and spikes there that really don't mean anything? So how do you handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to the same point, which is if you have a single connected stack, right? It's easier to have good quality data to begin with. Meaning, if you have different point solutions, all of them are configured differently. So a city view tower in this one application is named as city v tower in this other, and there's no way like to really connect that data unless you like take a dump of everything and have some rules and logic which will fall apart. Again, something changes in one of these applications to connect these sources and say everything that I'm collecting through both these applications is for this one specific building, right? So being able to have like all of that information in a connected stack is super important. I think that gives you a good foundation. And then the second thing is as you are collecting this data, as Tommy said, like there are going to be these corner case scenarios which have to be handled appropriately. So there are various monitoring tools and various logics that can be built in, which says if there are spikes, right? Is there a trend of such spikes, or is it like one-off, right? And do you aggregate the information and show it to the customer? It's like these various cloud providers, they have a portal, and you can go in there and see they have these various services, and they only show you what is the health of that service, whether it's yellow, orange, or red, right, or green. And so it's almost like that, where you are aggregating this information, first of all, making sure that you have the right foundation. And I think the single stack gives you that. And then making sure you're aggregating it at a level and then displaying it via the mobile apps, the dashboards, or even in building displays to get that communication going with either your employees or your tenants.
One thing we really haven't touched on that I know we only have a few minutes left, but I want to talk about the importance of connected buildings and remote access, because as COVID hit and everyone was working from home except for Tommy, it included pretty much everyone who was responsible for operating the buildings in the first place. And so many of our buildings didn't have the capability for remote access and remote login and credential management to get into the access control system and the BMS and the lighting control system. And so, we're faced with a situation where we either have to send engineers and facility managers on site and risk health issues, or we're faced with a situation where we can't control the buildings, right? So Tommy, let's talk a little bit about,
I'm a tough one to ask that question, because we've been there since 2003. So I can't really discuss something that I did 20 or 8.
But for the people who haven't gotten there yet, tell me why, first of all, why did you do it in early 2003, and why is it so important?
Well, it's important so more importantly than what you just asked is the ability to do that is great, and you have to be able to do it. If you haven't done it, you need to do it. But before you can do it, if you don't secure it, don't do it. So the security is the highest perspective for me. And if you have to start there, you have to secure it. And then if your guys can't control your buildings remotely, you must be, do you drive to work with a pedal car? I don't know. It's so tough because I mean, I hate to say it, even in a time clock controlled building, which I have some, you can still automate it for not very much money at all. You don't have to put a BAS in, but you can automate the time clocks with the network time clock for about $108 a piece, which gives you some flexibility into seeing it. The ability to consume, and not even just for COVID, for energy consumption, if nothing else, you have to be able to do it. When you get that call that, hey, there was a positive COVID case on the 3rd floor, you don't want your engineer to have to run in the middle of the night and turn the outside air on and run it for an hour so the building's flush before the morning. Secondly, the ability to see, you can't manage what you can't see. If you can't see it, you're not managing it, you're running it. And running it is not a great thing because you're always trailing somebody else. You have to lead the pack, or at least get out in front of the technology. And the technology is so inexpensive, so readily available, that if you're not doing it, I'm sorry, you might as well roll up in a Fred Flintstone car.
Well, I think there's a difference between what the market is doing versus what Tommy's doing, which is why we always love having Tommy on these panels. And Maria, I'm sure that you guys are also very advanced in that area, but
Yes, they are.
in terms of what you're seeing in the market though, do you see that it's kind of common that everyone's got remote access, or is that more the exception than the norm?
No, I would say that it's far more common. It's
It definitely has over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So the next part
It
of
has changed because I think COVID's really even strengthened the business case for that. I mean, there's really no discussion, to your point, Tommy. There's no discussion. I think it's another imperative. I have to reuse that word. It's another imperative. And I think that even the associations like BOMA, they're really focused on helping the industry, press gas on that whole model. So I've seen a huge shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's the top 5 technologies for getting people back to work. I think it's not only technologies for the clients and the tenants in the building, not only for the management of the building on a day-to-day basis, but also the operation of the building in a post-COVID world, or even a during COVID world. Which leads me to kind of the last thing I want to touch on with the last couple of minutes is the future of digital twins, and being able to take all of this data and all this information and create a digital twin of the building, and to be able to run various scenarios and be able to really monitor and manage and operate your building from the comfort of your home on off of a computer. So Maria, let me start with you on that one. What are your thoughts on digital twins and where that technology is going in the future?
I honestly believe that it's another business case that's been amplified through this pandemic. And I do think that there's going to be, a surge in interest because of where we're at, but certainly kind of positioned more on a discussion agenda. I don't know what you're seeing, Sagar or Tommy, but certainly something that they want to talk about as opposed to put aside. However, I do think that we want to stabilize the current situation where a lot of us are in different stages on the digital maturity curve. So I think a lot of that has to be worked out before you can really engage in that whole digital twin. I would say strategy, but I certainly think that it should be part of the discussion. And I don't think it's going to be dismissed. So I've seen that, right? So I think that that's certainly risen.
Sagar,
being able to resume our operations, to be able to manage our businesses, right, digitally.
Yeah. Sagar, what do you see as the future of digital twins?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. With the remote access, the automation. At Yardi, we acquired like 3-4 companies in this space in the last 4 or 5 years, and are offering Yardi Pulse, that gives a building owner and even the occupiers, depending on who wants to use this, and an insight into their energy utilization. It is intelligent enough with artificial intelligence and machine learning to tell you where are the optimization opportunities over there and what you can do. Tommy was talking about when the building is not occupied, why am I running my HVAC system right throughout the period. And instead of doing this manually, there are devices that sits on top of your HVAC system and controls all of this for you. And so, having that occupancy management system connected with your, Yardi Pulse-like system and passing the information so that the building can operate intelligently is what I think from a technology perspective, Yardi is aiming for. I'm sure a lot of other companies are too. And that's all because of the feedback that we are getting from, our customers.
And Tommy, what are your thoughts on digital twins?
I think it'll play a part. I think this is probably enlightened and people to look into it. I think there's a long way from it becoming what the standard is, simply because there's so many other things you can spend a lot of that hard-earned money on to improve the building as itself. And when you look at let's face it, all our buildings are not new. There are always going to be more old buildings than new buildings. And to retrofit the old buildings for a digital twin is tough.
Yeah,
Well, great.
you start somewhere and then you take it to the next level, right? I think the focus is where's the most ROI that you are getting, and when energy is like 10, 12, 15% of your overall spend in the building, let's focus there and then go to the next steps and then go.
Well,
Well, this
just on
has been
energy,
great, and just
on
I'm
energy,
sorry.
darling, it's not even just energy. BEPS is going across the country, and when you start getting a fine for using too much energy, it goes above your energy cost.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to wrap up, because I know we're at the top of the hour here, I just want to summarize the conversation and go back to what do we feel are the top 5 technologies for back to work. And from what I've been hearing, we're seeing, desk booking, reservations, room booking, probably larger rooms, larger offices that people are looking for. Heard a lot of conversation about occupancy detection and being able to manage occupancy, dedensification, things like that. Touchless solutions. Obviously, people don't want to be touching common areas, digital, elevator buttons, things like that. I heard mobile apps is going to be not only very important now, but in the future, not just for communicating with tenants, but also in terms of providing tools and technologies that they need through a single user interface as opposed to multiple. Indoor air quality, obviously a big factor in getting people back to work. And so I think that was my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So thank you so much for your contribution to this discussion. Really appreciate it. I'm going to head down to the Plan On booth at the expo floor. So if anybody wants to continue the conversation or has extra questions for us, please feel free to meet me there. So thank you so much, Maria, Tommy, and Sagar. Really appreciate
It was great.
your time and the conversation.
Great panel. Thank you.
Great. Thank
Thank
you.
you, darling.
Have a great afternoon. Bye.
Yes, bye.